Thank you very much. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm delighted to see such a huge crowd. As Rafizi says, it really shows how very concerned Malaysians are about what's happening in the country. Now, the other day I was on a flight back from Australia on Mars, and I started talking to the steward, and he told me, and I said, how are things? Well, he gave me a list of things that were going on with Mars, the people who were being retrenched, people who were not being paid enough compensation. He talked about routes to Perth. We're not going to fly to Perth anymore directly. We're not going to fly to Adelaide anymore directly. All sorts of things happening to Mars. And it went through my mind, and I thought, this is exactly what's happening to the country. Mars was destroyed, a premier airline. We should be flying high, like Singapore Airlines. But we have been reduced to this basically by corruption. And this is exactly what is happening to the country. We are being destroyed by the massive corruption that we have had to face. And I remember saying to someone, I never really appreciated, and I'm sure it's the same for all of you, how very corrupt our leadership was. Did you know the extent of the corruption? I mean, we knew there was corruption, but my goodness me, I think most of us had no idea the extent to which the corruption goes. Now, what the AG did, and I will talk about that for a minute, in clearing the Prime Minister was most unusual, particularly in relation to the 2.6 billion investigation, because that investigation had not even been completed. So you can't clear anyone until the investigations are complete. I don't know if people realize this, but those investigations were not finished. MACC had not completed those investigations, and yet the AG couldn't wait to close the file. And he says there's no law prohibiting donations. Now, if you look at the definition of gratification under the corruption law, you will know that the second word that appears in the definition of gratification is donation. You can't run away from the corruption laws by saying it was merely a political donation. There was no one anticipated any rewards in giving that money. I find that hard to believe. Can you believe that? Yeah, you can't. And so what they've done is they have completely made the law look foolish. And that's really my objection to the way in which all those who have sworn to uphold the Constitution and the laws of this country are the ones who are undermining it the most. And then we heard IRB come out and say there's no tax payable on this money. And of course, we had many reasons put forward for this donation. Let me just read you some of them. This was almost immediately after or around the time that the AG closed the file, perhaps just before actually. Let me share with you some of the reasons, just in case you forget. It's very easy to forget a lot of these things because something happens on a daily basis and you forget the last ridiculous thing that happened. On August the 11th, Dato Sri Nazri said that the donation was from a quote-unquote brotherly nation which wanted to see certain parties win the 13th general elections because they were friendly to them. I can tell you there are any number of offences there, all right, that have been broken, election laws. That was one explanation for the donation. 4 days later, UMNO Kuantan Division Chief Dato Sri Wan Adnan said the 2.6 billion was from Saudi Arabia as a form of appreciation of Malaysia championing Islam and fighting militant group Islamic State of Iraq and Syria. Another explanation for the donation. Then on August 22nd, the Transport Minister says, the donation came from their Muslim friends in the Middle East, and wait for this, to help UMNO fight DAP in the 14 general elections, as the party was funded by Jews. Well, they better get another 2.6 billion because DAP is standing here strong despite all that money that was spent. And then we have a few more. You probably remember them. That basically to help Barisan Nasional, and this came from the Deputy Prime Minister. He said he met the donors' representatives, and basically the funds was to help Barisan Nasional maintain Malaysia's status as a Sunni country, and so on and so forth. So all kinds of reasons and explanations given, all of them trying to actually be very helpful. But in fact, I mean, if you have friends like that, who needs enemies? They are complete nonsense that has been dished out to the people. Now, I remember reading a cartoon after this whole thing about nothing illegal about donation and so on. And in that cartoon, there was this man bribing a policeman, and he said, no, it's not an offense anymore because this is a donation to you, donation to the policeman, and therefore can never be an offense again. Now, when that happens, that's when you know that the rule of law has completely gone. Because nobody respects the laws anymore, particularly those who are making the laws in Parliament and those who are administering the laws, like AG's chambers, the police, etc. They are actually the ones who are responsible for undermining the laws. They are not showing respect for the rule of law in this country. So I agree with Rafizi, of course. It's been going downhill for a long time. But don't ever forget what this looks like. What the utter undermining and erosion of the rule of law looks like. It looks like what's happening now today. And I want you to remember that, because we must never forget that this is what it looks like. This is what it feels like. This is what we are handing over to our children. And we must remember it, because we will recover. History shows that it can only go that far. It will recover, and when it recovers, we must make sure that we never allow this to happen to our country again. And I always ask myself, why is it? Now, one would imagine, with all these scandals blowing up all over the place, that at least during this period of time when we're saying 1 MDB, Tabung Haji, etc., on a daily basis, at least at this time, they would stop being corrupt. Unfortunately, they carry on. Regardless, totally shameless. They carry on with their activities. They carry on doing what they like and give us ridiculous explanations for the actions that they take. They don't care about how bad they look. They don't care about what people think of them. That's something I just can't understand. And they give us ridiculous explanations, which they know make them sound stupid. They don't care about that either. Look at the issue of the 1.5 million Bangladeshis who are coming into the country. Now, I'm really concerned about that. Number one, I think it's very wrong that Malaysians attack the Bangladeshis. We cannot do that. That's unacceptable. It's not their fault. They are actually victims. And they're going to be brought in, and I want to know who are these plantations and factories that are going to employ them. Because quite frankly, I don't think they have an employer. I may be wrong, I'd like to be wrong. If I'm wrong, they should name the employer. Because there are occasions when they have been brought in, they actually become victims of trafficking, and it's done because certain people can make a lot of money bringing in these people as workers to this country. So I'm very happy the Malaysian people are not keeping quiet. On a daily basis, we're asking questions. They're asking questions about these poor people who are going to be brought in to this country. And we must continue to do so. And I'll tell you what I found very odd. The one minister who should be saying something, who is the Minister of Human Resources, is silent. Silent about the workers, silent about who are their employers, silent about what's going on. But who is speaking a lot? Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of Youth and Sports, Minister in charge of Parliament, Azalina. What have they got to do with these people? I want to know from the Minister of Human Resources, why is this happening? When we have so many people here, undocumented, whom we can actually bring into our fold as employees. Anyway, that's for another day. But the point I make is this, that despite these huge scandals that are hanging over us, none of our leaders think that it is important to restrain themselves and to ensure that they show discipline at a difficult time for the nation. Now, what did the AG propose? The Official Secrets Act be amended and people be given life imprisonment and 10 strokes of the rotan for disclosing information. That's another undermining of the rule of law. For example, if you now decide that for pickpocketing, you are going to impose the death penalty, that makes the law ridiculous and unacceptable. And that would be against the rule of law. What the AG is proposing in relation to the OSA is an undermining of the rule of law and an undermining of our federal constitution. And the Attorney General should be the last person who should be suggesting a despicable piece of legislation like this. So, at the end of the day, really, when you talk about the rule of law, you have to think about our institutions. And of course, the institutions include the AG, the enforcers, the MACC, includes the IGP, includes the judiciary, includes all the other institutions, Parliament. Parliament is failing us. Look at the NSC bill. Disgraceful. And do you know something? I actually went to Parliament to try and persuade some of them to our point of view that the NSC bill is a disgraceful bill. Many of them didn't even appreciate what it was about. I can tell you, a lot of our parliamentarians didn't understand what the NSC bill was about. In Senate, of course, you had them go on and on about this, that and the other, but in the end, with a voice vote, it went through. So our Parliament is completely failing us. Not the opposition. The opposition put up a good fight. I've got to commend them for that. An excellent fight on the NSC bill. But I hope when the opposition, I'm saying when, come into power, that they will bring in limited terms for the Prime Minister and other leaders. Because when I say limited terms, say for 2 terms. Because we must never ever have a situation like this again, where someone can stay in power ad nauseum, and I say ad nauseum, that is even when they make us sick, they carry on as leaders. We must never allow that to happen in this country again. And I will say this, because I believe change will come. So many people come up to me and say, we're losing hope. What are we going to do? How are we going to handle this? Well, let me tell you, history shows that these kinds of abuses cannot go on forever. Change will come. And as I've said before, now's not the time to give up hope. Now is the time to continue fighting, because they will weaken. They will weaken. And I will say this, we must, you all know Breaking Bad, right? Remember my name? Remember my name? We must remember their names. The names of all of those who undermined the constitution of this country, who undermined the rule of law, who abused the power that they had, who were corrupt, and who did a huge disservice to the people. We can remember their names, can't we? Let us never forget them, because we are going to make them account. We are not going to let them go that easily. And I will say this finally. The Prime Minister said, I think just a couple of days ago, that he wants Malaysia, or he wants to make Malaysia great. Am I correct? He wants to make Malaysia great. Well, I will say this to the Prime Minister, he can. By immediately stepping down as the Prime Minister, Finance Minister and Prime